Despite the federal opposition leader announcing his party has rejected the Voice to Parliament model, there are some within his party who are considering how they're going to campaign in the referendum. Aaron Violi is a Liberal MP who hasn't yet formed his position on the Voice and wants to hear first from his own constituents. He joins me this morning. Aaron Violi, welcome to RM Breakfast.
Hi, PK. Thanks for having me.
So lovely to have you on the show. You've said you'll wait to hear from your constituents about how they feel about the Voice. Just talk me through that position. Why have you decided on that strategy?
Yeah, no problem. So I'd already engaged with an organisation called Democracy Co, a grassroots organisation and they work on ways that MPs can engage better with their communities. And there's two projects I'm working on with them. And one was to better understand my community's view of the Voice. And that process is just starting. And so I wouldn't want to preempt where we land on that process while still supporting where we've landed as a party. So I want to stay true to my word and stay true to that process at the moment.
So can you describe what that process is going to involve? I've had a few texts, as I've said, that you're coming on, and people saying, well, how do you make sure that the loudest voices are not heard? Or, there's obviously lots of strategies people use to try and get in your ear. What does that consultation look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first part, we're still finalising the details, and we've actually got another meeting today about this process, but we'll be looking to do a survey out to the electorate and then having people opt in to a survey, but then find ways, as you said, to make sure that it's not the loudest voices, that there's a broad cross-representation of age, demographics across the electorate. We're geographically diverse. We've got some unique communities, so make sure those communities are heard. Really importantly, out in Healesville in particular, but also the Upper Yarra, we've got a really strong Indigenous community, and so we want to make sure that their voices are heard. I've already been engaging with the Indigenous community in Casey throughout this process. We want to make sure their voices are heard. We also want to present a yes case and a no case to those people so they can have questions answered, and there'll potentially be some unanswered questions. I've had a lot of people reach out with questions about the detail of the Voice that we don't have yet. So we want to engage in that process. And there's always that risk of the loudest voices being heard. But that's ultimately why it's so important that I engage with the community, because this isn't actually a referendum about politicians. It's for the public to decide. And the more information they have to make an informed decision on whether they vote yes or no, and we have a respectful debate and respect all sides of the argument, I think the stronger will be not only in Casey but also across the nation at the end of this process.
Polling shows a majority of voters in Victoria are supportive for the Voice. If that's the case in your seat, will you actively campaign for the Voice?
At this stage, I'm not planning to actively campaign. The main issues that constituents in Casey talk to me about is the cost of living crisis that they're undergoing, whether it's mortgage rates increasing, energy rates going up. Businesses are struggling, so there's a lot we need to do as local representatives. I'm hearing more from my community about their concerns about the economic challenges that we face, and I want to make sure I'm being a voice for them and holding this government to account for things like the $275 reduction in energy bills that they promised that are clearly not coming. So there's a lot of other issues that we as politicians need to be across and need to, as an opposition, hold this government to account on outside of the Voice. So at this stage, I'm not planning to actively campaign on a yes or a no case. There are groups forming and some MPs are passionate about this issue and will be campaigning, but there's other priorities in Casey that I'll be focusing on at this stage.
Okay, so absolutely, I get that. But so what's the purpose of this process then if you determine it's a yes, mainly in the community, or a no, but you don't?
It's about bringing the community together because, as I said at the start, PK, it's not about my voice or my opinion. I get one vote at the referendum. So this brings people together to be better informed. They can then share those views with other people in the community. It can continue to engage in the conversation. There's a lot of conversations going on. I'll share the results of this survey with the community and those that want to be informed. So it's about an ongoing conversation. And it's also, for myself, one area that I am really passionate about in this conversation that has started to get some more traction, which I'm really glad to hear, is about local, regional and national voices and how that will work, because as I said previously, in Casey, we've got a really strong Indigenous community, but the challenges the Indigenous community in Casey face are very different from the challenges of inner Melbourne, completely different from Alice Springs, far north Queensland. I've got a genuine concern about how our voice will be heard as part of a national body, and that's even as part of a local and regional. That detail is actually crucial, because if we're not hearing those local voices in Casey as an example, how are their challenges going to continue to be addressed? Which is what we ultimately need to do, is deliver results on the ground.
Yeah, so just on how the Liberal model works, there's local and voices. That's the model that the Liberal Party has adopted, and that would be legislated. But would you need a national voice to try and feed in those local voices to Canberra?
And this is the real question, is this and this actually goes to one of the criticism of the government about not doing the work on the detail, because the Australian people want to know the answers to these questions.
Oh, yeah, they do. But my question is about your policy, though.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I'm making the broader point that these are the conversations that need to be had, and for too long we've been told we couldn't discuss the detail. I'm just making that broader point. But absolutely, you need to have the local voices, the regional voices feeding into a national voice, because these challenges also, and this is just federation, which we all saw through the pandemic, a lot of these challenges, not just for the Indigenous community, but across the nation, involve all three levels: local government, state governments, federal government working together. It's why I actually called on a broader issue, but it's linked. I called for, a look at federation reform and how all three levels of government are working together, and that includes in the Indigenous community, but also across the nation, because we all know if those three levels aren't aligned, results aren't going to be delivered on the ground.
So you kind of need, therefore, a national kind of voice to feed those local voices through to Canberra?
Ultimately, the minister is responsible for being the voice for any portfolio, but for Indigenous Australians in this case, and local members of Parliament.
I imagine it would be very, very exhausting for a national, whoever it is, minister consulting with many different regional bodies, right? There needs to be a feeder system.
Correct. And I'm not opposed to having a national. And I think we get caught up on this word, a national voice. There needs to be a mechanism, absolutely, that local, regional voices into a national voice that can be heard in Canberra. There absolutely needs to be a mechanism to make sure those local and regional voices, because we already know, and I know that the Minister, Linda Burney, spoke about this week. I was actually talking to my uncle. It's a little bit complicated, but he's Indigenous through adoption. It's on my wife's side. He works in remote communities in the Northern Territory, and I was talking to him over Easter about the voice, and he's a supporter of the voice, but he made the point that many Indigenous people in the Northern Territory aren't even aware of the voice. But he also made the point there are existing community organisations that do represent them at a leadership level.
We're out of time, which is why I'm rudely interrupting. Thank you so much for joining us. Right. Liberal MP Aaron Violi there. You're listening to ABCRM Breakfast.